Hi, this is Brett Ingram, entrepreneur and award-winning product creator, and today I want to share with you how to find the best freelance talent when outsourcing. Outsourcing. What is it and why do we need it? Well, outsourcing, as you probably know, is basically the idea of getting other people to do work for us that we hire on a temporary or part-time basis. So unlike a full-time employee, when we bring somebody in, we have to pay them benefits, they're full-time, they get a salary, things like that. Outsourcing is sort of job-specific, task-specific. I expect that it's probably something that you're familiar with and certainly something that maybe you've dabbled with or tried or whatever. So the benefits of outsourcing are really simple. You can get people quickly, you can get people that are specific to a given skill set, and you can get them on demand for when you need a particular job done and a particular task done. And then when you don't have that task anymore, you can let them go. So you don't have to constantly find work for somebody or get them into new tasks all the time in order for the outsourcing to pay off. And so essentially that is what outsourcing is in a nutshell. The other thing that it does is it allows you to tap into a global marketplace. So if you're hiring somebody and you have a physical office, then you're going to need them to be in your physical location. When you're outsourcing, you can go worldwide. So the great thing about that is you're able to do it in a way where you can tap into talent that exists anywhere on the planet. And that is a really powerful thing and benefit in terms of outsourcing. So I can share with you some of my outsourcing experiences and the reason that I wanted to create this episode, because when I was starting in digital marketing and I started to grow a little bit, I got to a point where I was so overwhelmed. I had so much work that I needed to get done. There was no way I was going to be able to get it all done. And I knew from my colleagues and other people in my industry that at that time, what they were using was sort of an outsourcing model. And some of them were very good at it and had built really big teams. Other people were just dabbling. I had never hired anybody in an outsourcing capacity before. I had been in a hiring situation in corporate life, but I never was in terms of digital marketing. And so I started to look around and I started to, try to find some people who could do some of the things that I needed. And I was so overwhelmed that the idea of getting somebody initially felt like, this is extra work. I've got to go hire somebody. I got to bring them in. But once I sort of got into it and I started to recognize the idea that, hey, if I bring somebody in to do this particular job for me, I can offload that. I no longer need to do it. And I actually had the inverse experience. I started to get almost euphoric about it. I was like, well, I want to hire somebody for this and hire somebody for that and hire somebody for this. And so one of the first couple of experiences I had were absolute disasters. One of the things that I did initially was I had posted a job and I was busy. So I went on one of the job sites and I basically just posted a job saying I need an admin to basically do a bunch of stuff for me. And it was a really simple job description and I didn't have a lot of detail in there. And I was overwhelmed by how many great responses I got, and a lot of them had good reviews. I did almost no vetting. I did no interviewing. The first person that was able to work the hours that I needed, that I could communicate with, and that looked like they had decent reviews and experience that kind of matched what I wanted, I hired. And I brought them in, and I didn't have any onboarding process. I didn't really know what I was doing with that either. So I just sort of brought them in and gave them like some tasks to do. So they went and they did the tasks, and then they're waiting for me to task them with more stuff. And what I found myself doing is going around and around, spending my time finding stuff for them to do, as opposed to having them be a productive member of the team. Now, it wasn't their fault. I didn't have it all laid out. I didn't have a clear idea. And it isn't that I didn't have enough work to give them. It's just that I wasn't really ready or prepared. I didn't have anything set up. So I was just sort of doing it. And then I doubled down on that same mistake, if you can believe it. And I said, well, I need a graphic designer. So I went out and I got a graphic designer and I did the same thing. Well, I need these 3 e-covers made for this product. So they make the 3 e-covers and they're like, okay, now what? And I had other stuff I needed them to do, but again, I ended up spending a lot of my time trying to find stuff to keep them busy instead of doing my own work. And it was an absolute disaster. I wasted a ton of money on it. I wasted a ton of time. I ended up having to let everybody go and start over. And I did this, a number of times. I made a lot of mistakes along the way, but I also sort of refined a lot of things along the way. And I figured some things out that really make a lot of sense. And, so one of the things that I want to share with you is a 6-step process that I created. And this process I use to now hire any outsourcer that I'm going to go get, because I've found that even when there's an urgent need, and especially when there's an urgent need, that's when we're at our most vulnerable. That's when we're ready to go out and post it and just hire Mr. or Miss Right Now. They might not be the right person for the job, but they're a Band-Aid. They're somebody who says they can do what we need done. So we run out there, we grab them. They're the first one. They look like they have decent reviews, whatever. And next thing you know, we're not getting the quality we want. We aren't able to give them the right direction that they need. And it's a lose-lose because they're ultimately not that happy. They don't really like it. We aren't that happy because we're not getting what we want. And we're frustrated because they didn't intuit what it is that we expected that we needed. So over the course of all that trial and error, and I share that with you so, hopefully you can learn from my mistakes and not make the same ones. And hopefully what I can share with you will help you sidestep all of that so you avoid all of those headaches and problems, because it actually took me a couple of years to really sort of figure it out and get into a groove. And it doesn't mean that every hire is then great, but the percentages go way up. And your percentage of success, your odds of success go way up. So the first step, as I've sort of alluded to already, is to start with a clear idea of exactly what you need. I don't mean sort of a general idea, hey, I need an admin to take a lot of stuff off my plate. That's way, 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 way too general. And I'm going to actually go through an actual job description that I created. That's a template on another episode that I will share with you so you can see exactly how to break this down. But what I'm talking about with a clear idea is there are 4 main things that we need to identify. The first thing is the overall summary, right? Summary of the role itself. So this is just what you need the person to do. A superstar, virtual admin who takes no prisoners and knows how to rock the house, or whatever you want to call it. But we need sort of a general summary of that role. So we need a title, and the title doesn't need to be anything impressive. It just needs to be something that is illuminating, so people that see it, it'll catch their attention, right? Because the idea is, if we're going to post something, we want people to see it. And so the summary is just sort of the overall big picture. This is how people can easily sort in or out very quickly. If I read a summary, it should tell me whether or not I'm a general fit for the job. There may be other specifics to it later that I might say, okay, I thought I was, now I'm not, or whatever, but at least I get a general idea of whether to keep reading or whether to move on. So that's sort of the summary and the role. You sum it all up. The second piece of information that we have to be able to be very clear on is the tasks and the responsibilities that the person is going to be doing for us. This is the actual day-to-day. When the clock starts and they're on the clock and we're starting to pay them money for doing the work, these are the things that they're going to be doing on a daily basis. So we think this through and we put a bullet point for each task that we've got. So that way we really understand what those tasks are, and we can think it through. And the process of doing this is the other interesting and fascinating thing. Just going through this process to create this will help you crystallize all the things that you need to know. So the tasks are literally every single thing that you want them to be able to do. And it doesn't mean it can't evolve. It doesn't mean it can't change. But out of the gate, there has to be a set idea of stuff that you need them to do, stuff that you want them to do. And those are sort of the tasks or the responsibilities. The third piece is, and this is also very, very important, is the performance measures or the results. So, okay, you might say to somebody, well, I need you to answer all the tickets in the support desk. Okay, Well, maybe I'll answer this ticket today, that ticket next week, the ticket after that 3 weeks later. Performance measures give people an understanding of what you're expecting in terms of quality and in terms of pace and in terms of output. So it isn't just doing the job, it's doing it to a certain standard. I need every ticket answered within 6 hours of it coming in or 24 hours of it coming in. I want, I want feedback that we get from our responses to be 95% or higher positive. Certain specific requirements and performance measures that allow people to understand, what it is that we're actually looking for. If it's graphic design, then it could be something to a visual standard. You could give them a template or an example and say, I want everything to be made to this quality, 300 DPI, super high quality, like all of these kinds of things. And so you have to think about what it is in terms of the measure of the results. I need my email inbox cleaned out every day. I need, in terms of performance, I expect, this particular level of throughput or this particular level of performance and those kinds of things. So that's very important. So we don't just have people doing the work, but they're doing it to a standard that they understand that there's a time constraint, there's a quality constraint that we need them to hit. This also will help weed people out, because if they aren't that good or they don't want to work that hard, they won't want to do it. And then the fourth thing that's equally important is the requirements or the skills that they need. Now, these could be hard skills like, Microsoft Word or Adobe Photoshop or whatever, but they can also be other skills, like takes initiative, self-starter, doesn't need to be, micromanaged, things like that. It could be somebody with the roll up the sleeves mentality, can-do attitude, someone who's willing to jump in and do whatever needs to be done to get the job done, someone who's proactive. It could be any of these other kinds of skills as well that sort of paint a picture. And so what you're starting to see is if you put all these four pieces together, you're sort of painting a picture of the avatar of what it is that we're looking for. And when we do that, it gives us a very clear idea and it lets us make adjustments. Oh, you know what? I thought I needed that, but actually when I look at this, that doesn't really go with this or whatever it is. And it also lets the person know that's looking at the job whether or not they're a good fit. If there's somebody who's lazy and you have high performance standards in there, they're going to keep going. They're not going to want your job. If they think it's something that they can get hired for and then, go surf the internet for 2 hours while you pay them, then, if you don't have standards in there, then they might apply for it. And so people that hold themselves to that standard or believe they can deliver that quality will apply. It doesn't mean you won't get some duds. There's still some duds, but this will zero you in on the target. So that's the first step, is get absolute clarity on what it is that we need. And it's a little time consuming, but trust me, it's so worth it. The second task or second step in this is to post the job or to hunt for the person that you need. For me, it's real simple. I actually only use two websites. I use upwork.com, where I actually post jobs. I've hired a lot of people through there, a lot of very good ones. I also use Fiverr.com. If I don't want to post a job, or if it's a smaller job, sometimes I'll just go over to Fiverr.com, I'll search for the requirements I'm looking for, but because I know what I need, I can then go in and I can take a look at the various profiles, I can message people, and I can ask them if they can do what it is that I need to do. Otherwise, I post it on Upwork.com, and that way I can start to get candidates coming in to me. In general, if you're paying a fair amount and you have a good job description for an interesting type of a job, and there are people of all sorts, so people are interested in all kinds of stuff. Even if you find it boring, there'll be somebody out there that loves what you're offering. And then the responses will start to come in. So those are the two main sources I use. I've had really good luck with them. Again, you can find bad people there too, but I've not needed to branch out beyond that, and it's all worked really well. The other thing I like about Upwork and Fiverr is that if your Fiverr is a set amount, so you already know what you're paying. For Upwork, if you're doing it hourly, the great thing about it is they have a built-in feature where it will screenshot the freelancer or outsourcer's screen from time to time while they're on the clock for you. So if they're working for you and doing the task, and it's screenshotting them at random intervals that they don't know, and they're online, looking at comic books online, you're going to be able to see that and not pay them for the time. And Upwork will, stand behind you because they've got the video to prove it. So in general, it's going to keep people being more honest because they never know when they're being watched or recorded. And so they will monitor it. And also, they handle all the money transactions. You just pay the Upwork thing. They distribute it all. They do all that kind of stuff. They do the 1099s. And so it's really, really clean in that way. There's a bit of a service fee, but ultimately I've found it super worth it. So that's the second step. The third step is to vet the candidates. This is a big mistake that I made. I got all excited because I got a bunch of candidates coming in and they all had good reviews and stuff. And I scanned their resumes and I'm like, well, they look like a good fit. But I didn't do any vetting. So I just hired the first person that I thought was a reasonable price that was, could meet the skills that I needed. And it ended up being a disaster. So to vet them, I don't go into a huge in-depth interview. What I do though, deliberately, is I send them a message through the job board to see how they respond. I want to see how fast they respond. I want to see how well they communicate. I want to see what their attitude feels like. If they're curt with me and they're just like can't be bothered answering questions or they don't respond at all, those are big red flags for me because they're not even hired yet. So if they don't want to communicate to get a job, you can imagine what it's going to be like after you've hired them. So I vet their communication skills and I also ask them a couple of questions just to clarify about the job. So this way I can understand whether or not they understand what the job is. So I'll do that deliberately just to get communication going, see how responsive they are, see how fast they are to respond, see how thorough they are with their response and what their attitude is like. And if need be, I'll follow up with some more. I always ask for examples of work they've done that's similar or a client that they've worked with. I don't do references specifically, but I at least ask so they can give me an example and tell me about a time where you did a job like this or whatever. So again, you can get a sense of whether or not you're seeing eye to eye on what it is that you need. The fourth thing, once I've narrowed that down, is I'll narrow it down to a couple of candidates and I keep them sort of on the hot list and I'll choose the one I'm going to hire. And the fourth step is to hire small. And what I mean by that is you may have a huge vision for what you want this person to do. They might be your number two in the company. They might be doing operations. Don't start with that. Start them with something really simple and small to get them in and get their feet wet. It isn't overwhelming for them and it gives you a chance to test them out before you're on the hook for this big project that then you need to pull them off of and fire them in the middle if it doesn't work well. Give them something little and test them out and see how they do. If the responsiveness is good, if the quality is good, if all the standards that you wanted were good, the communication is good and all that stuff, then you give them more and more and more and scale them up. I've done that in my business and I've started a lot of people with a small $50, $100 project where I needed a little thing. And some of them now have been working with me for years and I spend, lots and lots on them because they do a really good job. But I started small and scaled and worked them up. The fifth step, and this is another one that I overlooked completely in the beginning, but is vitally important, is actually onboard them. A lot of times, we get to the point where we've hired them and we're like, all right, we're done. We're good. No, not exactly. They don't know our company. They don't know how we work. They don't know what our standards are, what our communication methods are. They don't even know our systems or anything that we're using. So it's vitally important to invest time in them initially in the first few days to make sure they have what they need to do the job, they understand that we're there to answer questions, that we're responsive to what they need, and we give them everything they need to be successful. It's a two-way street. They can only do for us what we need if we do for them what they need in order to do it. And so onboard them, spend that time. It's painful because we're busy and we're trying to do a lot of stuff. But by spending that extra time, it frees up all this other time down the road. When we don't do the onboarding like I didn't in the beginning, what happens is you end up running around fighting fires only to get rid of people, only to bring other people back, and you end up doing 10 times more work. Spend a couple of days up front. It'll be painful. You have to table some of your own stuff, but you'll be able to get to that and a lot more in the weeks to come if you have somebody who's good. And then the sixth step is to scale it up. So you start it small and then you scale it up. So you can give them more and more work. You can expand into other avenues. You can give them other responsibilities outside the initial job description, whatever, if you've got it. When you have somebody who's good and they know what they're doing, it's always best to lean on them and give them more than try to keep hiring new people. So get them up to optimization, get them doing as much as possible that they can capably do. And that way it's a total win-win. It frees you up to do more, and it also maximizes the productivity of our company, in our businesses. So, I mean, this process has worked very well for me. And while nothing will deliver 100% great hires every time, I get a lot fewer headaches and a lot more qualified and productive team members this way. So the takeaway is, to grow any business, there comes a time when we just can't do it alone and we need to get help. Hiring freelancers and outsourcing is a fast, simple, and cost-effective way to get the people we need to grow if we do it right. It takes a bit more time up front to follow the whole process, but in the end, it saves time, money, and headaches, and it enables us to get more done in less time.